Meet the Wheelers, so brave and so true. A mystical journey is waiting for you. Dad Arthur can fix it, Mom Ellie can steer. With Max and with Lily, there's nothing to fear. Barley's our dog, a magic retriever. 3 wishes a day for the magic believer. I'm Elias, your guide to this grand library. Buckle up, friends. Let's make history.
Welcome back, my darlings. The Wheelers are still following the trail of the Biblio-Express, but the mystery of the missing librarian, Thomas, is growing. Tonight, a heavy book in cracked black leather has fallen from the shelf, and the world is losing its color. Are you ready to solve a mystery in the rain? Put on your detective hats, because tonight we enter a world of shadows and ink. Chapter 5 begins now. The Library in the Mist. Chapter 5. The Monochrome Silhouette. The transition into the book was not a gentle drift. It was a violent invitation. As the Wheelers sat in the lounge of the Biblio-Express, trying to scrub the last of the tropical salt from their skin, a heavy volume bound in cracked black leather suddenly shuddered on its shelf. It didn't just fall. It lunged. The pages flapped like the wings of a trapped bird, emitting a low, rhythmic thumping that sounded like a heartbeat. A swirl of ink-dark mist erupted from the spine, coiling around the family's ankles like cold, grasping fingers. The library. It's not just showing us a story, Mom Ellie whispered, clutching her map as the colors began to drain from its edges. It's pleading with us. Before Dad Arthur could reach for his toolkit, the world inverted. The warm glow of the bus was swallowed by a flash of strobe light white, followed by a crushing, absolute black. When the light returned, it was filtered through a relentless, icy drizzle. The family stood on a cobblestone street slick with rain that looked like spilled oil. Everything, the sky, the towering brick buildings, the long-nosed cars parked along the curb, was rendered in shades of gray, charcoal, and silver. They were inside a noir detective novel, and the atmosphere felt as heavy as a wet wool coat. "Look at me," Max said, his voice echoing with a strange, cinematic reverb. He was wearing a trench coat and a fedora, his silhouette sharp and dramatic against a flickering neon sign. Lily looked like a miniature star of the silver screen, and Barley was a sleek, silver-gray retriever, his golden fur now the color of a winter cloud. A low moan came from the shadows of a nearby alley. A man stumbled out, clutching a tattered hat. He wasn't a hard-boiled detective with a square jaw. He was thin, wearing wire-rimmed spectacles, and his eyes were wide with a very unfictional terror. You're real," the man gasped, collapsing against a soot-stained brick wall. "You have shadows that move naturally. Please, you have to help me." "You're the librarian," Dad Arthur realized, stepping forward. "I saw your portrait on the library wall." "My name is Thomas," the man shook as he spoke. "I am the caretaker of this express. I was working on a draft. A mystery. I always wear my silver quill amulet. It's the only thing that keeps the boundary between the reader and the written word intact." But the chain snapped. It fell, and before I could grab it, my hand touched the wet ink of this unfinished page. The book claimed me. "Can't you just write us out?" Lily asked, reaching out to touch his sleeve, which felt like rough, charcoal-sketched fabric. "I can't," Thomas whispered, his voice trembling. "It is impossible to change a story by physically writing the text while being inside of it. In here, our actions are the ink. You can only rewrite a story by living it. The story is stuck. I created a wave of crimes, the great midnight heists, to drive the plot. banks robbed, jewelry stores emptied, the homes of the elite ransacked. But I never chose the culprit. I left the identity of the thief blank, thinking I'd decide it in the final chapter. Now the book is improvising. It's a machine without a pilot, and until the mystery is solved and the thief is handed over to the law, the end will never appear. We are trapped in a loop of rain and robbery. Then we do what we do best, Mom Ellie said, her eyes narrowing with determination. We fix the story. But first, we need a place to think. Thomas, you're the author. Where does everyone gather in this town? The Onyx Room, Thomas said, wiping rain from his glasses. It's the most expensive restaurant in the city. It's where the wealthy plan their deals and the gossip flows like gin. If there's a lead, it's there. The Onyx Room was a cathedral of Art Deco design. Gilded pillars rose toward a ceiling painted with silver clouds, and the air was thick with the scent of expensive cigars and rain-drenched fur. As they sat at a circular table in the corner, the family noticed the pattern of the book. The other patrons were flat, repetitive. A woman in a sequined dress laughed at the exact same interval every 3 minutes. A man in a tuxedo cut his steak with the mechanical precision of a clockwork toy. Then he appeared. "Good evening, travelers," a voice said. It was smooth, like velvet rubbing against stone. The waiter arrived at their table. He was a tall, lean man with a perfectly pressed white jacket. But unlike the cardboard cutouts at the other tables, the waiter was vivid. Max squinted. "Is it just me, or is he more detailed than the others?" The waiter chuckled, a sound that felt entirely too spontaneous for a background character. "A sharp eye, young man. Most guests here don't notice the help. May I suggest the smoked salmon? It was brought in this morning, just after the fog lifted off the docks. Quite a stir down there today. Apparently, the mayor's private safe was emptied last night. Dreadful business, isn't it?" Thomas leaned in, his brow furrowed. I don't remember writing that line about the docks." The waiter leaned over to refill Thomas's water glass. His movements were incredibly fluid. As he moved, the light caught his eyes. They weren't just gray. They were deep, intelligent, and observant. He didn't just walk away. He lingered for a fraction of a second too long, his gaze hovering over Mom Ellie's map and the expensive-looking watch on Dad Arthur's wrist. "He's very helpful," Mom Ellie remarked, watching him move to a nearby table where 2 wealthy bankers were whispering about a gold shipment arriving at the North Station. The waiter leaned in close to clear a crumb, his ear tilted just slightly toward their conversation. "He's the most well-written person in this whole room," Lily noted. Barley let out a very soft, confused huff. He sniffed the air after the waiter passed. The dog's silver ears twitched. To Barley, the waiter didn't smell like the charcoal and paper of the other characters. He smelled like everything. A mixture of dozens of different perfumes, heavy vault grease, and the cold metallic tang of coins. "Thomas," Dad Arthur whispered, "why is he so detailed? Did you plan him as a major character?" "No," Thomas said, looking troubled. "He was supposed to be a background extra, just a man with a tray. But as I look at him now, the shading on his face, the way his fingers move, he's become more complex than the hero I'm supposed to be. It's like the book put all its creative energy into him while I wasn't looking." They watched as the waiter moved effortlessly through the room. He was a shadow among the elite, a man who saw everything and was suspected by no one because he was just the help. He was the perfect witness, or the perfect ghost. "We need to follow the crimes, not the people," Thomas insisted, his author's logic failing him. "The thief must be someone with power, a rogue general, a bitter socialite. That's how these stories work. But as they left the restaurant, the waiter held the door for them. "Be careful in the alleyways, friends," he said with a polite bow and a small, knowing smile. "The city has a way of taking things from those who aren't looking." As they stepped back out into the drenching rain, the family felt a chill that had nothing to do with the weather. The mystery was wide open, the thief was invisible, and the librarian was losing his grip on his own world. They had to find the culprit before the ink of this world turned into their permanent home. The Library in the Mist, Chapter 6, The Final Sentence. The hunt through the monochrome city felt like walking through a labyrinth made of smoke. For hours, the Wheelers and Thomas the librarian followed the logic of the book. They checked the banks, they checked the mayor's office, but everywhere they went, they were 10 minutes too late. The safes were already hanging open, the locks picked with a surgical precision that left no marks. "He knows our every move," Thomas cried out in frustration, standing under a flickering street lamp. "It's as if the thief is reading the pages as I think them." Mom Ellie looked back toward the glowing sign of the Onyx Room in the distance. "Thomas, think. Who knows where the wealthy go? Who knows when they are on vacation or when the banks are moving their gold? Who stands in the room, invisible, while the powerful discuss their secrets?" "The police?" Thomas guessed. "No," Mac said, his eyes widening. "Someone much closer." Before they could piece it together, Barley suddenly bolted. The silver retriever didn't bark. He let out a sharp, urgent yip and raced toward the Diamond District. "Barley, wait!" Lily screamed, her small trench coat flapping as she ran after him. The family sprinted through the rain, their heartbeats echoing like drums against the pavement. They turned the corner just in time to see a shadow slipping through a side door of the Sterling & Sons jewelry shop. The door hadn't been forced. It had been opened with a key. "The shop is closed today," Thomas panted. "The owner told everyone at dinner that the guards were off duty for the holiday. How would anyone—" He stopped, his face turning pale. He heard. At the restaurant. He was clearing the plates when the owner said it. They burst into the shop. The interior was a forest of glass cases, all reflecting the dim moonlight. In the center of the room, a figure stood at the main vault. He wasn't wearing a tuxedo or a mask. He was wearing a dark, hooded cloak over a familiar white jacket. "Stop right there!" Dad Arthur shouted, pulling his large adjustable wrench from his belt. The thief spun around. He was fast, faster than any extra should be. He lunged for the window, but Barley was faster. The dog tackled the man, pinning his arm to the floor. Max dived in, grabbing the hood and yanking it back. The family gasped. Under the hood was the waiter. His face was even more detailed up close. Every line of his cunning smile, every spark of greed in his eyes was rendered with the finest ink. He looked more real than the librarian himself. "You," Thomas stammered, stepping forward. "But you're just a waiter. I only gave you 3 lines of dialogue." The waiter laughed, and the sound was chillingly human. "That was your mistake, author. You gave me ears to hear, and a world full of fools who think a man with a tray is a piece of furniture. I didn't need you to write my ending. I've been writing my own, one stolen coin at a time. I know every secret in this city because I was always there, pouring the wine." He tried to reach for a concealed pistol in his waistband, but Dad Arthur stepped in, his wrench clanking against the metal of the gun, knocking it across the floor. "The story doesn't end with a getaway, pal," Arthur grunted. "In this family, we finish what we start." "Hand him over to the law, Thomas," Mom Ellie urged. "Complete the arc." Thomas the librarian stood tall. For the first time, he didn't look like a victim. He looked like a creator. He reached out and grabbed the waiter's collar. "You were a good character," Thomas said firmly, "but you've overstayed your welcome." They dragged the waiter out into the street. The sound of a police siren, a long, mournful wail, began to approach. Two monochrome officers stepped out of a patrol car, their movements stiff and scripted. "Officers," Thomas said, his voice ringing with authority, "I am the witness. This man is responsible for the great midnight heists. Here is the evidence." He pointed to the bag of diamonds spilling from the waiter's pockets. As the officers clicked the heavy iron handcuffs onto the waiter's wrists, something miraculous happened. The gray sky began to crack. A sliver of warm, golden sunlight pierced through the clouds, and where it touched the ground, the color returned. The red of the bricks, the blue of the neon signs, the golden fur of barley. It all flooded back in a tidal wave of light. The waiter looked at the family one last time, his expression one of pure, finished realization. As the police led him away toward the station for his trial, he faded into the background, becoming just another part of a completed book. "The end," Lily whispered. The world of the city began to dissolve into swirling lines of text. The buildings turned into paragraphs, the rain turned into commas, and the street turned into a long, straight line of ink. With a soft whoosh, the Wheelers and Thomas were thrown back onto the floor of the Biblio-Express. The bus was warm. The scent of vanilla and old paper was back. Thomas sat up, gasping for air, and looked at his chest. There, lying on the carpet, was his silver quill amulet, its chain perfectly intact as if it had never broken. He snatched it up and pressed it to his heart. "You saved me," Thomas said, looking at the Wheelers with tears in his eyes. "And you saved my city. The mystery wasn't just solved, it was given a soul." Outside the windows of the bus, the thick, terrifying mist was gone. In its place was a beautiful, clear night sky over the Great Plains, the stars shining like spilled diamonds. The hungry feeling of the library had vanished, replaced by a deep, peaceful quiet. "My adventure is only beginning," Thomas said, and for the first time, there was no fear in his voice, only inspiration. "This bus isn't just a warehouse. We are heading out to find those who are lost in their own mists, those who desperately need that one specific book, the one that provides the answer or the hope they've been searching for. From now on, we will be wherever we are needed most." He placed a gentle hand on the detective manuscript, which now rested in a place of honor on the passenger seat. "And I promise you this. I'm going to rewrite the story of that waiter. In my next book, he won't be a thief destined for a cold cell. I will give him a chance at a new, kind story where his sharp eyes and quick wit are used for something beautiful. After all, every character deserves the right to redemption, provided their author has a kind heart." Thomas tipped the brim of his hat, and the Biblio-Express emitted a soft, musical hum. The massive midnight blue bus began to fade slowly into the starlight of the plains, transforming into a shimmering constellation on the horizon. The Wheelers stood by their yellow wander wagon, watching until the last spark vanished into the night, leaving behind nothing but the faint, lingering scent of vanilla and fresh ink. The end. And so, my darlings, the final sentence of that story for today has been written. The Wheelers are back in their beds to recuperate for their next adventure. But if you listen closely to the wind tonight, you might just hear the distant hum of a midnight blue engine. Thomas and his library are out there right now, rolling through the mists of far-off lands. They are looking for the lonely, the curious, and the brave, anyone who needs a story to light their way. And remember what Thomas promised. Even a villain in a dark book can find a new path if someone is kind enough to change the ink. Our own story for tonight is finished, but the best part about books is that they never truly end as long as we remember them. Close your eyes now. The Wander Wagon is parked, the stars are watching over us, and somewhere out there, a reformed waiter is starting his very first day in a much brighter tale. Sleep tight, my darlings. Good night.